Hi everyone, it's Jerry. I have an excellent game to share with you from the 9th and final round of the 2025 Sinquefield Cup. This was played on August 27th. On the white end, tournament winner, Wesley So. He's playing against Norbek Abdusadarov. Wesley, with this final round win, put him in a three-way tie for first, along with Caruana and Pragnananda, Wesley ultimately winning the tiebreak. We start out with an Italian game, but after knight f6 and d4, we transpose into the Scotch game. We are now looking at the Scotch Gambit. Follow up e5, d5, bishop b5, knight d7, and castles. Bishop e7 is the follow-up. The e-pawn is poison. Whichever knight captures the other one will be in a pin. White can simply take. So bishop e7 it is. Bishop for knight exchange. White collects the d-pawn and targets the c-pawn. From here, we have this awkward but best knight b8 to cover. c6. Swiping the pawn to try and defend the knight on e5 would not be stable. Can be questioned straight away. So it is knight b8. Also note, advancing the pawn is no good unless you like seeing your own queen get smothered. So we have knight b8, knight c3, and from here castles. Now, rather than castles, what's happening in the case of a pawn advance in the center? What are you doing as white after c5? I want to draw some attention to this move. The best way to reply to it is in the forward. Knight b5. And I want to touch on a few moves from here. a6, c6, and d4. Let me first touch on d4. In the case of d4, this diagonal has opened up. Queen f3 is a top response. And in the event of c6, you better have a good answer to these two moves. The way forward would be with knight e4, relying on the following trick. In the event this knight is swiped, there is knight d6. Bishop takes, pawn takes, and this rook is going to fall. White will win the material back. Okay, that is one line. In this position right here, what we can do in the case of d4. What about a6? In the case of a6, there is queen captures d5. The knight doesn't have to budge just yet. You're on the rook. And if black exchanges queens here, there's knight c7 check. And that's your way to collect the queen back while also saving the knight. Finally, in this situation, if black goes with c6, the way forward is with knight d6. And after these exchanges, believe it or not, taking this pawn is losing for black. It suggests castles at this point, allowing white to hang on to this passed pawn. What would be the problem if black picks it up? This would be the problem. A check, and also this follow-up, this only winning move, knight e4, taking advantage of the pinned d-pawn. And this is a problem. Queen has this responsibility watching over the pawn. If you're allowed to just scoop it back up, it's big trouble. It's big trouble no matter what black does from here. Queen e7, bishop g5, queen f8. There's knight g5 problem here. This is a very small investment for such great activity. Also, don't forget about the queen quickly contributing, applying pressure to these kingside squares. I took this one out a little further. You will find a couple master level games, Lee Chess Masters database, with this particular line right here. It's quite sharp. In reply to f6 in this position, there's knight takes c5, rook takes bishop. And what are you doing in this situation? Pretty neat follow-up. There's a capture on f6 and queen h5 check. This is as far as I'm going. It says that this is winning here with these three pieces attacking a significantly underdeveloped black side. Okay, we have an idea of what we can be doing if black starts to roll very early on with the center. In this one, it's castles. Queen f3. Follow up is bishop to e6 if c5 in this position, much simpler to digest these lines. Knight takes d5 with knight captures bishop check, and you're ready to swipe that rook. So d5 is covered, and now knight c to e2. White knows right around the corner. He's ready to be pushed around now with the c pawn. Knight gets out of the way. The c pawn is also now a blink away from being a contributor. Finally has an option or two. From here, queen d7, g pawn now in a pin, bishop h6 right around the corner, pawn unpinned. Knight f4, pawns start to advance, knight for bishop exchange, pawn takes, and c4. Immediately challenging the duo, and black's reply is not best, as it turns out. It says best is to take on c4. As ugly as this looks, yes, you've won a pawn, sort of. I mean, how great are these triple isolated pawns? This is considered the best continuation. Queen c3, knight c6, queen captures pawn is what it's looking at. Why is this a good decision? I believe the main thing that strikes me, at least, is that by taking on c4, this knight will not have a comfortable square in d3. So when you take on this square, even if there is a scenario where this pawn is picked up, of course you can't go to d3 straight away. Let's just say this pawn isn't here. d3 is never going to feel comfortable for the knight because it's on a completely open file. How black plays it, he acquires this protected passed pawn, and this pawn acts as a wonderful shield for the knight that will soon be a dominant piece in this game. Wonderful outpost square now on d3. No frontal pressure with the pawn on d4. All right, black doesn't take. d4 it is. We continue with queen h3. Two things to note. Second attacker on e6, and there is a pin. Rook f5, pop quiz. How would you respond here? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, top move in the game, g4. Where do you go with the rook? It falls back to f7. This pawn is poison. Rook captures pawn, runs into knight g6. We see that pin taken advantage of. Why does the rook go to f7 rather than g5? If rook g5, this is a very awkward square, first of all. Line of fire. The queen can back off to g2, it points out. Target the rook. Let's say that's held up. Knight d3. Wonderful piece. Rook is hit. Now what do? You back off here. Computer says top is g5. Ouch. This rook is squashed. What future does it have from g6? Stuck by pawns. Okay. In this one, after g4, it is rook f7, knight d3, top piece in the game, and it will remain top for the rest of the game. From here, knight c6, and bishop d2. Nice try. This knight is so good, black was ready to eliminate it with knight b4. Bishop says not so fast. Also, there are a couple ways you could defend b4. Why not go with the a pawn and maybe maintain the bishop? Don't have to give it up for the knight. If you play with a3, this is a problem. Knight a5. How are you defending c4? So it's actually two things the bishop move has in mind. b4 and a5. All right, black continues with knight b4. Pretty much an instant move. bishop for knight exchange it is. There's no way you're giving up this knight. Now, look at the structures. The majorities each has. White has a 4-3 majority on the king side, black queen side majority, but white's majority can roll. What are you supposed to do to get this pawn rolling on d4? It's going nowhere with this blockader. So we might describe black's queenside majority as unhealthy or immobile. White's is mobile. Starts to run now with f4. Doubled up. Rook f2. Pop quiz. What's your move? Feel free to pause the video. All right, big moment in the game. We have a5. The best move, however, is g5. Now, if g5 was played at this moment, no, white is not in a position to respond with f5, acquiring essentially a passed pawn, f5, maybe f6. You don't have enough support for it at this stage. What might a best line look like had g5 been played? We might have seen the rooks doubled up and all rooks exchanged. And in the end, bishop g5, the bishop, a non-factor in this game, at least now eyes, or is it close to at least, getting to e3. This is pretty much the only square where the bishop has some say in the game. All right, what we have in this one, no g5, we have a5. Let me back up one move. Rather than rook f2, what the computer wanted for Wesley was g5 to prevent black from playing g5. Now let me touch on this structure for a moment or two. First of all, playing g5, this square screams out to me. That's now a pivot square for the rooks. What's going on with this? Well, there's going to be a slower approach after g5 is played. Yes, you have this square for your rooks, but these rooks will not be able to trade themselves so easily. You don't have this break. There's slower approaches here. Queen gets out of the way, the h-pawn rolls, the knight remains a dominant piece, this bishop a non-factor. Knight glues things together on f4. The rooks really do not function well, even though there is this excellent pivot on f5. Okay. How it plays out? Rook f2, a5, white doubles, and from here we have g6. Black can no longer successfully play g5. If you play g5 here, now white is in a spot to play f5. I tested this out, flicking in a fancy move along the way. The fancy move doesn't work. What fancy move am I talking about? This one right here. Trying to cut the queen's defense from the pawn and say this one is poison due to a pin and win of the queen. Hang on. There's queen h5 here. f5 would be secure. Okay. In this one, after the rooks are doubled, it's g6, queen g2. From here, black goes with c5. Wait a second, though. The queen is no longer around indirectly, supporting an f5 advance. So what would happen in this case if black now played g5? Well, you could still play f5 in this position. Let me show you what this looks like. These are very important lines. I have no doubt Wesley had this following line in mind. Should g5 have been played here, the response would be f5. And after a capture, there's queen d5 now. And now what? What do you do with the queen? You back off. There's e6 hitting the rook, cutting the queen from the defense of f5. G takes f5 next. And in the event of a queen exchange in this position, this is a structurally superior position for white. The knight remains a dominant piece, the bishop a non-factor. Also, what do you do about this? Best is to advance. Given the pin here, 3 attackers, 2 defenders on that point. This is a position where what? White is down a pawn. Evaluation, however, it calls it plus 1.2. With this quick relocation of the rooks, targeting a weak pawn, These pawns remain very strong, and I imagine in an environment like this, it's the white king who's going to find a wonderful outpost very soon on this e4 square. It's really just crying out to be occupied by a king. All right, we do not see black play g5. It is c5, queen e4, beautiful post. No problems now. Direct support of f5 should there ever be g5. Okay, queen c8. Let's see the regrouping from here. b3, a capture. Black's trying to open up some lines, create a target or two for the queen. Has that. These two pawns, now a target, covered with a knight, being Ke2 knight. Not ideal, but things are held together. Now, also with this decision by Wesley to take on a4, b3 is now opened up. For what piece? This king that's about to do a walk. Black, from this point, a whole lot of shuffling. I mean, you're sort of just stuck. How do you make headway here? If ever g5, f5. That's just helpful to white. You just have to sit. So let's see the grouping here by Wesley, shuffling with the bishop. King f2, starting to make his way to this dream outpost on b3. Once on b3, what's happening? The king glues everything together, and the knight is free from its role of watching over a pawn, and it could relocate to a far better square. Pop quiz, how would you respond here? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, once king f2 is played, this was a very small window for black to play d3. Doesn't come up with it. In this game, we have queen a7. What's the story with d3? Well, rook's disconnected here. How would you recapture on d3? If you go with the knight, that hangs a4. If you take with the rook, well, that would be terrible. You're going to be losing the queen. And if you take with the queen, this one was a bit surprising to me. I thought, okay, you chop away on f4. Not quite. The way forward here would be with a check, and then this quick rook activity into this wonderful square, d4, exerting a lot of pressure on white's position. It would quickly morph into a best piece. The reason why in this position rook takes f4 is not working is because in the end there's a problem here as well as here. Ready to swipe the bishop with check. So rook takes rook, you swipe the bishop first. All right, the top line would be in this position right here after queen d3. Check, rook to d4. No, with this decision, let me go to this last move in the game, king f2. This decision to play d3. Even if you can't calculate all the lines, just know that this is going to be a very strong and stable post for the king. You have to at least try to be disruptive to this plan. Otherwise, white's going to be able to make slow, steady progress. And another way you might look at it is, you could point to this knight and say, if this position opens up, a Fiend Ke2 knight is rarely going to feel comfortable, productive. All right, king f2 in this game, queen a7, king e2, d1, c2, b3. Mission accomplished. a4 secure, the knight a moment away from going elsewhere, back to this wonderful post, d3. Rook f to f7, play on the king's side now. You could welcome this, the opening up of the king's side with the king nice and secure over here on the queen side. So let's see what this looks like. Prepping for an eventual advance, and there we go. You cannot allow the H file to be peeled open with this battery formed. Also the queen being a contributor, so it is g5. It says you could take on g5. That is a winning line, but I like the approach, a nice controlled approach by Wesley from here. Rook f1, rook takes, pawn takes, no queen takes. One attacker, no defenders. Let's add a second. It's the rook that will be the more efficient recapturer of f4. You take with the queen. All right, the rook for at least a moment can gain control over the opened f-file. It's rook f3 to f4, and we see a rook exchange. White remains in a winning position from here. Let us see the sort of finishing touches from this point on. Queen, a very active piece. Don't go too far. Possible check, fork, losing the bishop. Note there is no check on f3. Got that one covered. King g7, knight improvement. Bishop e7. Let me throw this one to you as a pop quiz. What move would you play here? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, there is more than one winning approach. I like Wesley's choice best. We'll see what that is soon enough. Let me first point out, you could take on c5. You could go into a queen-specific ending. You can also already dart with the a pawn. However, do you have answers to these questions after queen f1? You have a good response to this threat. Possible check here. Wesley says, this can wait. Let me control your queen. The move in this game, queen g2. Now what? What's your good forward move? Black queen doesn't have one. Just retreats is all. All entry points covered. From here, queen f8. Queen throws the bishop in a pin. Unpinned. Queen remains a pest. Targeting e6 now. That's covered. Right around the corner, there might also be queen d2 into c3. We have a check, however. The bishop blocks. In the final move, g5, black resigns. This will now force a queen exchange, and it will be a one minor piece ending. Let me show you what this looks like. If the game continued with queen captures pawn, there's queen captures pawn check. Pick your favorite square for the king. It does not matter. This is your way to simplify, and this is winning. So just carrying it out a little bit more like this, you collect a pawn, and you're ready to just push right through. King on b7, even if you don't have a knight one day, sacrificing itself for this pawn. A king and an a pawn and c pawn, king on b7 is going to be winning. So a very nice game by the tournament winner, Wesley So. What are your thoughts with this one? I really liked that decision to take on a4 and go for the king walk there to b3. Your thoughts? Feel free as usual to leave any feedback to this video in the comment section below. Hope you enjoyed it and maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care.